Hey, so today's Gemara is Daf Tes Vav, and we're on the bottom line of Yudalad and Mabez, and we'll take it from there. V'amar Rav Yochanan said, Harotze shekabel alav ol malchus shemayim shlema. If one wants to take upon himself the yoke of heaven in a complete way, a complete fashion, Yifna, he should go to the bathroom, he should empty his bowels, V'yitel yadav, wash his hands, V'yiniach tefillin, put on tefillin, V'yikra kriyishma, read Shmi Yishma, V'yispal, and then segue into davening. V'zuhi malchus shamayim shlema. That's a complete taking upon himself of the yoke of heaven, did it in the best possible fashion. Amar Rav Chibar Abba, Amar Rav Yochanan, Kol hanifna. Whoever goes to the bathroom, relieves himself, and to yadav, and washes his hands, and yach tefillin, and wears tefillin, v'kar kriyishma, and says kriyishma v'spala, and prays ma'ala v'kasav. The verse considers it ki'ilu bana mizbeach, as if he built an altar, v'hikra of carbon, and he actually sacrifice on it. Tichsiv, the pasuk says, erchatz b'nikayon kapi. Okay, so it says, I will, as mizbecha, so the pasuk says, erchat b'nikayon kapai, v'asoveva es mizbachach Hashem. Okay, so the reference of making a mizbeach of Hashem, it says erchatz b'nikayon kapai. I washed my hands, I cleaned myself off, and then I went into davening. It's a reference to davening and Shema, and then it's as if I had a mizbeach of Hashem. Amar le Rava. Rava told him, does the master not hold also kilu taval? It's as if he dipped himself in the mikvah. It doesn't say that I washed my hands. It says erchatz b'nikayon. Okay, erchatz b'nikayon kapai. The word nikayon is just a reference to cleanliness in general. So it's as if one is tovled, cleaned himself in the mikvah. So therefore, if one does it, this is not only as he brought a carbon, it's also as if he went to the mikvah. Ravina told Rava, Chazimar, see, our master, this young that came from Eretz Yisrael, and he said, Misha in lo mayim lirchotz yadav, whoever does not have water to wash his hands before davening, mekaneach yadav, he can actually wash off his hand, ba'afar with dirt, with little stones, b'kismis, and with little wood chips. Amarle told him, Shaper kamar, that is correct. Because why? Because the verse doesn't say, Miksiv erchatz b'mayim, it doesn't say I wash my hands with water. It says, B'nikayon ksiv, in cleanliness, anyway, that kol midi d'manaki, anything that can actually cause a cleaner state. Rav Chizda light amon demahadr be'idin salusa. Rav Chizda used to curse one who would search after water at the time of davening. Okay, that was only in regards to Krishma. So the understanding over here is that even though we know the halacha is that one must wash his hands before saying Krishma, before davening, you're supposed to wash your hands. He would get very upset and curse a guy who was searching for water at the time of Krishma, because he would say, listen, you're looking for water, and the Krishma time is actually going to pass fairly quickly, and you're going to miss the time for Krishma in the morning. So, but tefillah, when it comes to davening, the prayer of Shemona Esrei, you're supposed to go after water. You're supposed to look for water. Vad kama, and until how far do you have to go? Ad parsa, until a parsa's distance. A parsa is a distance of 4 mil, somewhere between a kilometer and a mile. That's only if you're walking along the way and you're on a trip and you don't have water and you continue walking and within 4 mil or within a parsa's distance, there should be water, some sort of fountain in front of you. Okay, if there's no water and you know there's not going to be any water within a mil, but it's behind you, if it's a filu mil in a choser. Okay, even if it's a mill, even if it's only a mill's distance, you don't go back for the water. And from here we can derive that milhu deina chozer. You don't go back if it's more than the distance of a mill. Hapachas mi mil chozer, if we would go back and make you actually go back and get the water. So this b'rla halacha that it's not something to take lightly. That one's supposed to wash his hands before saying krishma, and certainly before saying tefillah, before Shemona Esrei. Okay. Now the Mishnah goes, Hakara Shema. If one reads the Shema, recites the Shema, he did it in a fashion that it was not audible. He just whispered it, but he actually just like worded the mouth. He just mouthed it with his word. He just said the words and didn't say them clearly that he could hear them. He's Yotza. He still fulfilled his obligation. Rav Yossi says Lo Yatza. You are actually haven't fulfilled your obligation of saying Shema. What about Kara if he read of Diktik Bes Yisrael? He sort of slurred the words, he said it quickly in haste, and he did enunciate each of the words properly. Rav Yossi Amar Yotzer, Yossi says you're still Yotzi because you got the main idea out. And Rehuda Omer Lo Yotze, you're not Yotzi. Okay, and the third and final part, Akar L'Mafreya, if one reads retroactively, one reads cut up the parshas, as we said, the Gemara is going to discuss this. Lo Yatsa, he didn't fulfill his obligation. Kar B'ta, if a person's reading the Shema, he made a mistake, he mispronounced a word, or if he skipped a word, Yachzer L'Makom Sheta, he should go back to the place where he had made the mistake, and then repeat that verse and take it from there. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to get into the conversation about the obligation for one to have said Shema in a fashion that makes it audible. So the Gemara says, "My time of Rav Yossi." What's Rav Yossi's reasoning that you actually have to hear the Shema with your own ears when you say it? So he says, "Mishum Dichsiv." The verse says Shema. Right? Hear, O Israel. So he says, Shema means one must make heard with his ear, he has to hear with his ear that which comes out of his mouth. Okay, and what about the Tanakama, who says you are Yotze? He holds that the word Shema is for a different reason. The word Shema is like we said earlier, that you could say it in any language as long as you understand it, that you hear it. Okay, from the understanding of the word hearing in the broader fashion, that you understand it. And what about Rav Yossi? Rav Yossi tarti Shema mina. Rav Yossi says the word Shema is ambiguous enough that we can actually include both interpretations. A, that you have to hear with your ear what you say from your mouth. You actually have to hear the words. And B, that you can say it in any language. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to clarify. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in reference to Trumas. Okay, it's actually a quote from a Mishnah in Trumas that says, Tanan Hassam, we learn there, Cherish Hamadaber Ve'en Shemea. Now we have a concept of a deaf person. Now we know, biblically, according to the biblical definition of a deaf person is actually one who's a deaf mute. He can't hear and he can't talk, and his din is that he's patur mikol mitzvahs amurs b'Torah. We'll see in the beginning of Chagiga. He's actually exempt from all mitzvahs. He's sort of cut off from society if he can't talk and can't hear. Okay, that's a biblical deaf. But there's also a rabbinic deaf, which is a person who he can't hear, so he's deaf, but he could still talk. Okay, so here he's saying, Tanan Hasan, we learned, Cherish HaMedaber Ve'en Shemea. A Cherish who can't hear, but he can still speak. Now, Lo Yitro, he should not separate Trumas. When it comes to food, we know that you have to give tithes to the Kohen, to Levi, wants to be eaten different places. He should not. Why? Because Rashi points out he must say a bracha. There's a bracha that one says when giving truma, and this guy, since he can't hear with his ears the bracha that he says, lo yitram. Okay, but the Mishnah completes itself and says ve'im taram. If he did do it, trumasa truma. The truma is still good truma. So why is that? Because the bracha is not ma'akiv. The bracha does not hold back the truma from being truma. It's still truma. You just the bracha. You didn't get the mitzvah for the bracha. Okay? So the Gemara asks, Mantana, who is the author of this Mishnah that seems to say, Cherish HaMedaber Ve'en Shemea, di'avad, from the word, if one did it already, yes, but lichatchila, from the beginning, no. Meaning, this Mishnah seems to be clearly saying that one who is deaf, okay, but he can still speak, he should not give truma. Okay, he should not be the one to separate the truma, but if he did, the truma is good. So that seems to clearly state that he shouldn't. In the beginning, if he would ask us, we would tell him not to do it. But if he did it, it's okay. Okay, so who's the author? Rav Chisda Rav Yossi. Rav Yossi from the same Rav Yossi from our Mishnah. It's not as we learned in our Mishnah. A Kurdish Shema, one says the Shema v'lo yishmila azno, and he did not make it to say it in a fashion that was audible and he couldn't hear. Yatsa, he's still Yotzi. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, for Rabbi Yossi says lo Yotzi is not Yotzi. So what do you see? Must be that he's not Yotzi. Why is he not Yotzi? So the Gemara says ad kan lekamer Rav Yossi lo Yatza. The reason why Rav Yossi says you're not going to be fulfilled your obligation at all, that's legabe kriyishma dioraisa, because the nature of kriyishma is that it's dioraisa. It's biblical, and therefore he says you got to say it again. You're not going to be, he's not going to have fulfilled his obligation if he didn't hear the words in his ears that he said. Aval truma, when it comes to truma mishum bracha, the problem was the bracha. Who bracha d'Rabbanan, v'loy bebracha talia milsa. The whole issue of bracha, by truma, is a rabbinic decree, and v'loy bebracha talia milsa, it's not hanging, it's not dependent on the bracha for the truma to be a good truma. Okay, so therefore we're going to say that the author of that Mishnah, when it comes to Trumas, that says "B'di evidin lechatchila lo Rabbi Yossi," and in our Mishnah, the reason why Rabbi Yossi says lo yatsa at all is only because it's diaraisa. But he would agree in the Darabanan that b'di evidin lechatchila lo, that at least b'di avad, if he did it, it would work. Okay, so the Gemara says. Umimai Rav Yossi, how do we know? How can we be certain that the Rav Yossi is the author of that Mishnah by Truma? Dilma Rav Yehuda, maybe it's the Rav Yehuda from our Mishnah. Va'amar gabe kriyishma nami di'evedin lechatchila lo. When Rav Yehuda says in our Mishnah, Hakarishma v'lo yishmi la'azna yatsa, okay, that he's Yotzi, and that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Tanakama is Rabbi Yehuda here, right? Perhaps he's saying Yatza, you're Yotzi, but that's only if one did it. Hakore Shema, from the language of one already said Shema, so Rabbi Yehuda says he's Yotzi. But if you would ask us in the beginning, we would tell you not to do it. So maybe that's Rabbi Yehuda. Dom Rabbi Yehuda, he v'amar gabe kriyish manami, di'evedin lechatchila lo. Okay? So the Gemara says Teda, Shano, Dekatani, it says Hakore. Or the language of our Mishnah, like I pointed out, Hakora is mashma, it seems to be saying, if one did it, yes. And if one would ask us from the beginning, we would tell him no. So the Gemara says, Amri, hi Dekatani Hakora. Do you know why? Because the reason why it says Hakora is Laudiach HaKolchad Rav Yossi, is only coming to show us the strength, the extremity of Rav Yossi's opinion. That even if it's a case of diavad, right, where one already did it and now he wants to know, should he have to repeat Shema at all, still Rav Yossi is going to say, lo yatsa. Okay? That Rav Yossi, ladicha koch Rav Yossi damar di'eved nami lo. Okay, that even di'avad, it's not going to be good. Di Rabbi Yehuda, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, afilu lechatchila nami yatsa, according to Rabbi Yehuda, even lechatchila yotzi. Okay, so the Gemara is saying, so what do we come out? Rav Yossi. That seems to be, our mission is going to be like Rav Yossi. Okay, but Yavadin lechatchila lo, and the reason why Rav Yossi says in our Mishnah that I feel b'yavad lo is only because it's a reference to something biblical, something that's rabbinic in nature, like the brachos of Truma. By giving Truma, he would agree. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. So the Gemara comes out. But my kimte. So what have we established? Rav Yossi. V'elahadatanya. We have another brisa. Okay, another teaching that says, Lo yivarech adam birchas hamazon beliboy. One should not bless the bracha of the after bracha that we say after eating bread in his heart. Okay, that means without saying the words out loud. V'im birach. If he did it already, yata, he fulfilled his obligation. Repeat it. So money, who is that? Lo Rabbi Yossi, Lo Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because we said, Di Rabbi Yehuda ha'amar lechatchila nami yatzar. Rabbi Yehuda says Rabbi Yossi even lechatchila. And in Rabbi Yossi, Di Eved nami lo. Rabbi Yossi would say Di Eved you're not because it's deraisa. Birchat hamazon, the blessing that we say after eating bread, is a biblical nature. Elamai must be V'Di Eved in lechatchila lo. Okay, the Rabbi Yehuda must hold that Di Eved in and lechatchila lo. And lahad this that we learned Rabbi Yehuda Brei Shimon Pazi. We have a statement from Yehuda, the Brei of Shimon Pazi, son of Shimon Pazi, that says Cherish hamidaber ve'ein shomea. Okay, this is a contrast to the one we brought before. A cherish who is midaber ve'ein shomea. Okay, the same rabbinic kind of deaf. The din is that toyrim lechatchila. He could give truma lechatchila. Now, who is that? Money, who is that? Le Rabbi Yehuda of Le Rabbi Yossi. That doesn't fit according to Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Yossi the way we're establishing it. Because Rabbi Yehuda, if it's Rabbi Yehuda Hamar, Di'evedin lechatchila lo, he had said that we would say B'di'evedin lechatchila lo, and Rabbi Yossi Ha'amar Di'eved nami lo, that even B'di'eved you wouldn't. So how is it going to work? El Rabbi Yehuda must be Rabbi Yehuda. V'levafilu lechatchila nami, even lechatchila, Rabbi Yehuda is going to agree that you could do it. V'loi kasha, and the brayso we said before that seemed to be a stira. Hadidei hadirabe. That's the opinion. One is his opinion, and one's the opinion of his rabbi. Okay, he holds that afilu lechatchila, and his rebbe, and which he's quoting, is not his opinion, and his rebbe's opinion is that only b'di'eved. If he did it, are they machshir? Titznan, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mishum, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He said the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's teacher, Hakiris Eshma, a person who says the Shema, Tzarech Sheyashmiya Laznu, he has to be making it heard to his ear. Shenemar, Shema Yisrael Hashem Lakinu Hashem Echad. And Amalei Rameir told him, Rabbi Omer, the verse says, Asher Anochi Mitzavcha Yom Al Livavecha. That has to be on your heart. It seems to go after the intention of the heart, meaning you shouldn't have to hear it with your ears. So the Gemara says, if so we're saying that Rameir says that even lechatchila, Hashta dasas lahachi afilu tim Rehuda karabe svirle. Rehuda could hold like his Rebbe. Okay, that really b'di'evin lechatchila lo v'lo kasha harameir ha Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, that's how we're going to come out. The one's Rehuda, one's Rameir, one's Rabbi Yehuda. So now Hasa we learned in a brisa. Another example: Hakol ksherim likr samegillah. Everyone is kosher. Everyone's allowed to read the Megillah on Purim. Chutz mecherish shota v'katan. Only excluding a deaf person, a person who's considered a fool by halachic standards. The Gemara in Chagiga gives either three different things that he has to do, which include sleeping in a Beis HaKfaras, in a graveyard by himself, walking around at night by himself, or ripping his clothes like seemingly mindless, or he has to do all of them together. The Gemara over there, okay? But Rabbi Yehuda, says the Mishnah, machshir b'katan. Okay, he says that a cotton is kosher. So the Gemara wants to know. This seems to say Akol Kshem Lukas Megillah, except for a Cherish Shot of a cotton. So Man Tairna, who is the author that says Cherish B'di'eved Namilo, that even B'di'eved a Cherish can't? Okay, because he's deaf and he can't hear the words. Amar Master Rabbi Yossi, the Tanan, like we said in the Mishnah, Kor Shema V'lo Yishmi La'azno Yatza. Different Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer Lo Yatza. So the Gemara asks again, Mimai Rabbi Yossi, how do we know it's Rabbi Yossi V'di'eved Nami Lo? Dilma perhaps Rabbi Yehuda He L'chatchila Hu Delay Hadi'eved Shaper Dami. Maybe perhaps only L'chatchila on the top lines of Tesvav Beis, right? Maybe only L'chatchila is that he can't. But the Avad, if he did it, Shaper Dami would be okay. The Gemara says, Loi, they can't be. Loi Sal Kadaitach, it didn't even dawn upon us to think that. Tikatani Cherish Dumi L'shayt V'katan. Because we said that a Cherish is brought down with a shot of a cotton, so similar to a shot of a cotton. Now, what's the nature of a shot of a cotton? Ma shot of a cotton, divi avanamilo. We have, but if they did it, it's not going to be a good kriya, right? And people are going to have to do it again. That's the nature of the cherish over here, is similar, and it also is not going to work even if he did it. The Gemara says, wait a second. Why are you grouping together the cherish and the shot of a cotton? Perhaps they each have their own halacha. As it is, the Gemara says, "Omi matzas lokma Yehuda." Do you want to establish this like Rabbi Yehuda? We don't want to do that. I'll make a tiny sefer. The sefer says Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'katan. So it doesn't make sense to say that he is the author of the beginning of the Mishnah, and then he interjects himself, and he's machshir b'katan. He can't be the author of the beginning of the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, "Mechlal deresh alav Rabbi Yehudi." The Gemara says, "No, v'dil makula Rabbi Yehudi." Perhaps Rabbi Yehuda is the author of the whole thing. V'trei gavni cotton. There's really actually two kinds of cotton, two kinds of minors. V'chsur mechaser v'halchi ketani. It's missing words, and this is what it meant to say. Hakol ksherin likris is a Megillah. Everyone is kosher to read the Megillah. Chutz micheres shota v'cotton. Besides for a cheres shota and a cotton. B'medvar mamur. When is that said? B'cotton shalei hagina l'chinuch. A cotton who hasn't yet reached the age of chinuch, of being taught how to perform mitzvahs. Aval cotton a minor shagil l'chinuch, who's a guy reached the age of he's starting to learn. I feel l'chatchila kosher. Even l'chatchila is going to be kosher. Divrei Yehuda. Why? Shir Yehuda machshir b'cotton, because he says it's okay with a cotton. Okay? Now the Gemara comes out. First wide line. But Ma'ayo Kimte. How did we establish it? Yehuda. Okay? That Yehuda is the author of this Mishnah by Megillah. V'di'eved in l'chatchila lo. Elahadatani Yehuda b'rei Rishim and Pazi. We have a statement for Yehuda than Rishim and Pazi. Cherish hamidaber v'enishamer term l'chatchila. Money, who's that going to be? Again, Lo Rabbi Yehuda, Lo Rabbi Yossi. Because Rabbi Yehuda, di'eved in l'chatchila lo. And Rabbi Yossi, di'eved nami lo. So the Gemara says, "Elamai Rabbi Yehuda, va'afilu l'chatchila nami," also l'chatchila. And the 100 tiniest that we learned in the rice, the one we brought down before, of Lo Yavarach Adam Birchas Hamazon Beliba V'im Birach Yatza, which seems to say b'di'eved in l'chatchila lo. Who is that? It's not going to be Yehuda, it's not going to be Rabbi Yossi. Because we said, if it's Rabbi Yehuda, afilu l'chatchila nami, even Rabbi Yossi, Amar afilu b'di'eved nami lo, because again, it's biblical. The Gemara says, "Lo Olam Rabbi Yehudi, va'afilu l'chatchila nami, v'lo kasha." Again, the same answer. Hadidei hadirabe. One is going to be him, and one's going to be the opinion of his Rebbe. Tanya Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Mishul Rav Elazar ben Azariah, in the name of Elazar ben Azariah, HaKorin Shema, one who recites Shema, Tzarech Shiashmiya la'azno. He has to let his ear be heard. His ear has to hear the words. Shenemar Shema Yisrael Hashem Lakinu Hashem Echad. And Amalei Rameir tells him, Omer Sharnochi Mitzavcha Yem Alev Avecha. after the heart. So the Gemara says, we asked this lahachi since we came out with that. Afilu tamer Rabbi Yehuda, even you could say Rabbi Yehuda karabes really holds like his Rebbe. Velokasha har Rabbi Yehuda haramer. Okay, now what's the halacha? Amar of Chizda, Amar of Shila, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda, sha'amar mishur of Lezim. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, that's said in the name of Elazar ben Azariah, and the halacha Rabbi Yehuda, then the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, in both these cases. So, what does that mean? So Gemara says, we need both of these statements of Rav Chizda, the name of Shila. So said halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. I would think afilu lechatchila, even lechatchila, like as we said before, kamash malad halacha Rabbi Yehuda, shamar mishum Elazar ben Azariah, that it's only been the evidence. If I said just like Allah Rabbi Yehuda, that it only in a case where he has no way of fixing it, it'll be okay. That it's okay, and he can get away with it. And Amar Rav Yosef says machlokas b'krishma. The machlokas here is only in krishma. Aval b'shar mitzvah comes to other mitzvahs. Divrei hakol lo yatsa. He's not going to be fulfilled his obligation if he doesn't hear. T'chsiv, the verse says haskes, pay attention, v'shma Yisrael, and listen. So the Gemara says, wait a second. We said before, if someone shouldn't say it in his heart, so it can't be because b'di'evid, if you did it already, you're going to fulfill your obligation, and that's not regarding Kriyishma. The Gemara says, if you want to teach it, this is how you should teach it. Rav Yosef, machlokas b'kriyishma. The machlokas is regarding kriyishma, t'chsiv shema Yisrael. That's where the argument is involved. Havel b'shar mitzvahs divrei hakol yatsa. When it comes to other mitzvahs, everyone's going to agree you have fulfilled your obligation, especially at least if you did it. B'haksiv, the verse says haskei shema Yisrael, that you pay attention and listen, and we say that verse seems to imply that you have to hear. The Gemara says, "Ahu b'divrei Torah ksiv." That is in regard to divrei Torah. That one should pay attention and listen to the words of Torah. Okay, it says, "Kasvu atzmechem al divrei Torah." You're supposed to pay attention to it. From the word haskes, the Gemara later on at the end of the Masechta is going to darshan the word haskes to be different things. Either you should put yourself in groups, or you should cut yourself down. You should destroy yourself in your limanat Torah. Okay. Now so that's sort of how we're coming out over here. The Gemara continues. Amar of Tevi. We said if one reads and wasn't careful in the pronunciation of each of its letters, we go after both of them, both Rav Yossi and Rav Yehuda lahakal. So when it comes to reading the Shema, if you didn't hear, you're going to be yotz like Rav Yehuda, and when it comes to just being medakta in the Yossi Yosel, we're going to pass like Rav Yossi that you're going to be yotza even if you were not medaktik exactly. Okay? Another quote from Tevi in the name of Yoshaya. What does the verse mean when it says? The verse, this is a verse that's in Mishlei. It says, Hine, it says, okay, that there are three things that are never satiated, and the pasuk over there is talking about the earth is never satiated, the womb of a woman who's never given birth, and the grave is never satiated. Okay, so what does this pasuk mean? So the Gemara wants to know, what does the grave have to do with the womb? To tell you, just like the womb, it takes in and it lets out, meaning it takes in the seed, the sperm, and it sets out a child eventually. Also the grave, it enters the dead bodies. Umotzi, in the future, when Mashiach comes and we have Tchias HaMesim, before and after, it's going to, the bodies are going to come out of the grave. And the Gemara says, it makes it certain. How do we know? Umar Rechem, the womb, that it's entered in quiet and darkness. The sperm is entered in darkness and quiet. When the sexual act takes place, it's done quietly. But the woman's screaming, the baby's screaming, everyone's saying Mazel Tov when the baby comes out. Shaul, the grave, that we enter dead people into the grave with loud voices of crying and eulogies. Ain't a din. Doesn't it make sense to say that in the future we're going to take out the bodies and we're going to have a resuscitation of the dead people with Tchias HaMesim? So the Gemara says, Mikan Shuva La'imim in Tchias HaMesim from the Torah. This is an answer. This is a way to refute those who claim that there is no Tchias HaMesim from the Torah. Okay? Tani, Rav Yoshaya, Kamei Rava, Rav Yoshaya taught in front of Rava, Ukesavtam, right? We said the word, we said in Shema, we say Ukesavtam, you should write them down. Hakol Biksav, everything should be written, the whole parsha of Shema should be written. Afilu tzavos, even the commandments, meaning even when you make a mezuzah, you have to write ukazavtam mezuzah b'secha, and you should write also in the tefillin. When you put on the tefillin, you should write ukashartam and all the tzavos of how it should be done, meaning the commandments regarding the parsha of Shema. Okay, Amar Lei told him, who told you that? He said, Rabbi Yehuda. How do we know? To Amar Gabe Sota. Now we know with the Sota is a woman who was suspected of having illicit relations with another man, and she had locked herself up. So we have the whole concept of Kinui Vestira, where we warn her. We have two witnesses, and then when she again locked herself up privately for a long enough a time period that's long enough, the Gemara says there, for one to actually crack an egg and fry the egg, so long enough to perform a sexual act, and we're did it or not. So we take the Shem Hashem, we take the name Hashem, and we put it into the water. We melt into the water. She drinks it, and she either, as I had an English rabbi used to say, she becomes a sota pup, and her thigh actually explodes, or she has a blessing to have children. Okay, so we know by sota when the din is we take the paper that has the parsha of sota and we write on it we dissolve it into water. Hashem says, even my name I allowed to be erased, for the sake of peace between harmony between a husband and his wife. Okay, so what we see is that over there it says the Amar Gabe Sota. We take on the piece of parchment we write Olos Kosef Tzavos Ena Kosef. Okay, we write the curses that she's going to get if she's lying, and she in fact did have the relations. But Tzavos Ena Kosef. Okay. Over there, we don't write the commandments. We don't write the whole process that takes place in the Beit Hamikdash, and the whole process that takes place with the woman. We don't write the husband over there. Who the verse says, you should write these curses. That's part of the commandments in the Torah, is to write the curses down. But the inference is, because it says to write the curses down, okay, since it says to write the curses, of Shema, where it says to Uchasavtim afilu tzavos nami. Okay, so the Gemara says, Atu Taimid Rabbi Yehuda. Is that the reason Rabbi Yehuda mishum dichsiv v'chasav? Taimid Rabbi Yehuda mishum dichsiv alais. The reason why Rabbi Yehuda specifically says by the sota that you don't write the commandments of what takes place within the story of the sota is because over there it says specifically write the alais. Alais means the curses in Savois loy. Okay, so why would we need the ukasavtam to tell me that specifically you should write the whole thing? We would think that you should always write the whole thing within the parsha. The only reason we don't, according to Rabbi Yehuda, he seems to say, is because it says specifically there only write the curses. Okay, so the Gemara says no, we still need uksaftim. You know why? It's true we need it. I mean, I would have thought that we would have ksiva mehasam from there, from the parsha of Sota. Mahasam over there, alis in. We only write the curses, but tzavayis we don't write the whole process as it takes place in the parsha. Avachos over here, hachanami tzavayis loy kasav. So we would not put the tzavos. The Gemara says kasrachmana uchasavtim that filu tzavos, specifically to tell us that we write even the tzavos, even the process of putting it in the mezuzah and putting it in the tefillin. We include that as it's written. Okay, Tani Rabbi Ovadia Kamed Rava. Rabbi Ovadia is taught in front of Rava. Well, lemadatem. The pasuk says lemadatem. You should teach them. But with the drasha is shehei lamudcha tam. The way you pronounce, the way you say it over, should be complete. What does that mean? You should put a space between the words that you're more naturally, basically predisposed to slur between the dveikim, between the ones that literally are clinging to each other, that are stuck to each other. What does that mean? Ani Rava Basrei, Rava explain after him kagoyin the words as we say in Shema al levavecha. Now the two lamids are the same letter, so if you say it quickly and you don't pause, you could say al levavecha, which could sound like one word, or al levavechem, or b'cholavavecha, or b'cholavavechem, or the words esev v'zadecha, right? Which again, the same vet could be there could be slurred and it could come to that you weren't pronouncing it right, or v'avatem mehera, or the words akanaf pasil. Eschemearis, so they have the same letter. They end with each one ends with the same letter as the next word's first letter begins with. Amar Rav Chaber Rav Chanina, Kol HaKoyre Krishma, whoever reached Krishma. Umidaktik b'yos yasel, and is careful in how he pronounces each letter. Mitzanin lo gehenim, a worthwhile endeavor, because they actually cool down hell for you. Shneim, like the first says, Befaras Shaddai Malachim Bat Shalig B'Tzalmon, which is the verse is talking over there in Tehillim. He says when Hashem spreads out the kings on it, it will snow in Tzalmon. And when the drasha we say Altik Befaresh when he spreads out, Ela Beferesh when one enunciates, when one pronounces correctly. And Al Tikr B'Tzalmon, as a place Tzalmon, B'Tzalmavis. We darshan it Tzalmavis, which is the shadow of death, which is a reference to Gehenna. Okay? So tomorrow we'll take it from here on Daf Tez Zayin.